Somewhere outside of time, before the very concept of before existed, there was nothing but pure emptiness. But it's out of that nothing that a family will be born, one that ends up deciding the fate of an entire world. Gods, giants, monsters, all tangled together by blood ties so tight it's genuinely hard to tell where a relative ends and an enemy begins. And if you thought Odin was the one who created it all, I've got bad news for you. There were beings before him that almost nobody remembers today, and without those ancestors, there'd be no 9 worlds, no Thor, none of this Norse epic at all. So today, we're tracing this family's entire bloodline, and trust me, the drama inside it puts any modern TV series to shame.
On opposite sides of this void, which the Norse called by the tongue-twisting name Ginnungagap, sat 2 opposing worlds. To the north lay Niflheim, a realm of ice, frost and endless fog. To the south blazed Muspelheim, a realm of fire where everything that could burn, burned. Sooner or later, these 2 forces were bound to collide, and when the extreme heat of the south finally reached the Arctic cold of the north, the ice began to melt. Life was born out of that collision. That's how Ymir came to be, the first of the giants, the Jotnar.
His method of reproduction was, let's say, a little unconventional. While he slept, a pair, a man and a woman, crawled out of the sweat under his left armpit. Then one of his legs somehow fused with the other and produced a 6-headed giant on top of it. That's how the race of frost giants began, long before anything resembling the gods we know ever showed up on the horizon.
Meanwhile, out of that same ice emerged the primordial cow Audhumla. She spent her days licking a block of salty ice, and day by day, something started emerging from the rock. First hair, then a head, and on the 3rd day, a full body. That's how Buri, the first of the future gods, came into existence. So here's where we stand. 2 completely different genetic branches, both born out of the exact same chunk of ice. On one side, the Jotnar, multiplying at an alarming rate in their sleep. On the other, the ancestors of the Aesir, just barely getting started. Buri somehow ended up with a son named Bor. Bor grew up and married Bestla, the daughter of one of the giants. As you can see, gods and giants were mixing blood from day one, long before any hostility kicked in between them. That union produced 3 brothers, Odin, Vili, and Ve.
The problem was that the giants were breeding way faster than this fledgling line of gods could establish itself. The 3 brothers looked at the growing army of relatives descending from Ymir and realized either they took control of the situation now, or there'd soon be too few of them left to change anything. So the brothers struck first, and struck hard. They jumped Ymir, their own great-grandfather, and killed him. Out of the body of the fallen giant, his blood, his bones, his skull, they built the very world that humans and gods alike would go on to live in. Some sources claim a 4th party was involved in this act of creation. Hoynir, Odin's brother, a figure the myths are oddly tight-lipped about, even though his role in shaping humanity is mentioned directly.
This new family of gods, by the way, didn't come from just one bloodline. It came from 2. Odin, Vili, and Ve belonged to the Aesir, but there was another clan entirely, the Vanir, tied to the earth, fertility, and harvest, rather than war and sky. Leading the Vanir was Njord, patron of fishing and seafaring, father of the twins Freyja and Freyja.
Sooner or later, these 2 factions were bound to clash. War broke out between the Aesir and the Vanir, the first war this world had ever seen. Scholars believe this myth reflects an actual historical clash between two different pagan cults among the northern tribes. But it all ended peacefully enough. Both sides called a truce and sealed the deal with a hostage exchange. The Vanir relocated to Asgard, and Njord, Freyja and Freyja were formally folded into what we now call the Norse pantheon. Odin took Frigg as his wife, a woman you could easily call the queen of this whole pantheon. She was tied to marriage, home and fate, and apparently knew the future just as well as Odin himself. She just preferred not to spoil the ending. The couple had several sons. Baldur, the resident golden boy, everyone's favourite, a walking embodiment of light. His brother, Hoda, the blind god, destined for a genuinely tragic role down the line. And Hermod, the fearless messenger, the Norse answer to Hermes, who handled the tricky business between worlds. From the same generation came Bragi, god of poetry, whose greatest asset in Asgard was arguably his wife Eden, keeper of the apples of youth. But Odin was never exactly husband of the year. He kept plenty of side connections going, and the most famous result of his extracurricular activities was Thor. His mother was the giantess Njord, the living personification of the earth herself. Odin deliberately sought a partner outside the Aesir, wanting a son who'd be strong not just among the gods, but physically bound to the very earth he'd one day be defending. Over time, Thor became the face of the Asgard brand, and for good reason. His wife Sif, a goddess famous for her golden hair, gave him a daughter, Thrud, and a son, Modi. Thor also followed in his father's footsteps and had a fling of his own with the giantess Jarn Saxa, who bore him a son, Magni. To be fair, Sif didn't come into the marriage empty-handed either. From a previous relationship, she brought along a son, Ul, who became Thor's stepson. This guy is the patron god of hunting, archery, and skiing. The defining symbol of this branch of the family became Mjolnir, a hammer forged by dwarves specifically for Thor and the ultimate symbol of Asgard's defense against endless giant raids. Baldur's story is the point of no return for Asgard. There was a prophecy about his death, and Frigg, desperate to protect her son, extracted a promise from every single thing in existence – rocks, metals, animals, plants – never to harm him. The one thing she skipped was a small sprig of mistletoe, which struck her as too insignificant to bother with. Naturally, Loki dug up that loophole. At the time, the gods had turned Baldur's invincibility into a party trick, hurling swords and stones at him for fun since nothing could touch him. Loki walked up to Hother, the blind brother standing off to the side, handed him a dart carved from that very mistletoe and kindly helped him aim. One throw, and everyone's favourite god drops dead on the spot. Odin's reaction was unsettling, to say the least. Instead of mourning, he went straight to the giantess Rinda and fathered a new son with her, Vali. This kid was born for one purpose: revenge. He hit full adulthood in a single day, and before he'd even had time to wash up or comb his hair, coldly killed the blind Hother, settling the score in blood. There's a second revenge storyline running alongside this one too. That's Vidar, Odin's son by the giantess Grid, the one fated to settle accounts not for Baldur, but for Odin himself when the time finally comes. Loki's origins are a mystery in their own right. Some call him the son of giants, others insist he was basically Odin's blood brother, adopted into the family of the gods on close to equal footing. His children make up one of the darkest branches of this whole tree. The wolf Fenrir, whose strength terrified even the gods themselves. The world serpent Jormungandr, so massive it coiled around the entire known world. And Hel, half alive, half dead, ruler of the Norse underworld. One kid deserves special mention: Sleipnir, Odin's 8-legged horse. And yes, Loki is the mother. Sounds bizarre, but here's the short version. To get the gods out of a brutally bad contract with a giant builder, Loki turned himself into a stunning mare, distracted the giant's enormous stallion, and, well, took one for the team. The result of that absurd little operation was the best horse in all 9 worlds. Funny enough, every one of these creatures is still part of the same bloodline we've been tracing this whole time, just the branch the rest of the family would love to cut out of the photo album.
And now this entire sprawling family web, Odin, Thor, Loki, their heirs, their bastards, their monsters, inevitably converges on a single point. Norse mythology had been building toward this moment since the very first drop of melting ice. The grim Norns wove the threads of this ending long before Asgard was ever a great city. And on the day of Ragnarök, every branch of this insane family tree, no matter how minor, will have a part to play. Some will stand their ground defending home, some will join the forces of chaos, and a few, against all odds, will still be standing on the smoking ruins once the ash finally settles.
Want to know exactly how this family settles its scores on the day the world ends? That's coming in a dedicated episode, already waiting for you on the Age of Myths channel. I'll leave you with this. This whole insane chronicle of betrayals and secret children isn't just a Norse soap opera. It's the reason this world burns. Every old family grudge eventually comes back around as a killing blow. This was Age of Myths. See you in the next ancient legend.